martial law. One-sided. It is a big idea. Propagandists from a new world order.
With skillful manipulating of the press, they're able to make the victim look like the criminal, and the criminal look like the victim.
We love what's happening.
We're here preliminarily that the first strike
America,
was
we can do it.
I welcome you to Make It Plain TV.
Forget America. White America is an irredeemably racist country.
As you walk around Midtown and downtown Detroit today, you can't help but be amazed. From the art to the technology to the business, this section of Detroit has come a long way. It's certainly a far cry from the images you may see online or on television. But as you look around and see the progress, you can't help but also notice the despair. Midtown and downtown Detroit in particular are home to thousands of homeless men, women, and children. My goal by the end of this documentary is not only to open your eyes, but your minds as well to this problem. And by the end, maybe convince you enough to act.
Stick together, baby. 'Cause I know what they want. And you know what they want. They want us to get out the city. I know that they do. They want us to get out the city. Just tell us the truth. They want us to
I have Nashville in green. The rest are red.
You have 2 on Christie and 2 on Nashville, right?
Yes.
I like Nashville more than I like Christie, so maybe both Nashvilles.
Did you pull up the picture for this one?
I did.
727?
Yeah, that's the right off Gunston in the alley, right?
Yeah, next to Alley.
It's okay. I think I like this
Newer
block
roof,
more.
though. Newer roof,
Yeah.
that's $5,000, so.
Stevie Hagerman and his dad, Steve, buy up hundreds of Detroit homes every year.
So are we going after both Nashvilles and leaving Christie alone?
Which Christie? The first one?
We got.
It's the first of 2 rounds of the annual online auction of tax foreclosed homes, run by the Wayne County Treasurer's Office.
Now, we're gonna pass on, don't bid on that thing.
In a matter of days, the Hagermans will become the new landlords
Yeah, you
of
drive
already
by this
occupied
one,
homes.
too. We're closing in on Manning, huh?
You are the winner. 14019.
I'll wait and see what Stevie says. He knows he saw it.
When this is all said and done, how much money will you have spent?
Under $3 million.
Better.
Yeah.
The tax foreclosure epidemic is a contradiction at the heart of the revival of Detroit, where chic shops and high-rise apartments build up downtown, but east and west neighborhoods are littered with burnouts and board-ups. Stevie Hagerman manages properties on the east side of the city. In the days around the auction, he surveys well-kept, mostly occupied homes coming up for sale.
13870 is my first one. It's gonna be right here on the right. Yeah, so this brick one here to the right. It's got a guardian alarm, the roof's in good shape. That's your typical brick 3-bed bungalow. It looks occupied. This street, 1 off 8 Mile, the homes are gonna go high. That's one we'd definitely be interested in.
Can you walk me through how you actually make money on this?
The way you make money, say I buy the house you're in personally for $500. I'm now the new owner. I'm offering you a deal to stay there. I'm not charging you a security deposit since you're already there. We'll take care of your major issues, whether it's roof, plumbing, electrical, tank, furnace. We sign a 12-month lease. You pay me $500 the first of the month. In one day, we've gotten our money back, and then after that, it's profit.
One of the homes he's targeted is Judy Kelly's.
Just a 2-bedroom bungalow, but I made it nice and comfy for me and my family.
She's a mental health social worker, making a little over $2,000 a month.
So we can have 2 bathrooms. Hot water tank.
She bought her home in 2009, right as the recession hit, for $3,952.
I had to get the pipes changed from lead to PVC.
Almost immediately, her tax bills were crazy high. That's because the value of her home was assessed at more than 10 times the price she paid for it. By 2017, she had racked up $23,000 in back taxes and fees.
What kind of financial strain did that begin to put on you?
A lot, because it seemed like every time they would send me out a letter, I would try to come up with the $500-600 that you had to put down on it to try to save your home.
As she put a child through college and cared for her dying mother, Judy only managed to pay $1,000 toward the property taxes she owed.
As your home heads into this auction, while you are literally living in it, how are you feeling?
It's a lot of history that I had in this house. All the memories of me and my children, my grandchildren, the holidays. My mother lived here before she became ill. And just to see it all snatched away, it's kind of heartbreaking.
Judy is just one of thousands who've experienced this. Homeowners pay property taxes based on a city's assessment of the value of their homes. Home value goes up, your taxes go up. Home value goes down, your taxes are supposed to go down. When the Great Recession hit in the late 2000s, property values tanked. But Detroit didn't lower taxes far enough. One study found that between 2009 and 2015, the majority of homes in the city were overassessed. In 2010, 85% were. Even with recent improvements, reports show Detroit's assessments were inaccurate as late as this year. According to experts who spoke to Vice News, many of them were so high they violated the state constitution. What the law does allow for is a confusing city-county relationship. Wayne County fronts Detroit any missing tax money and then becomes the debt collector, charging struggling homeowners as much as 18% on unpaid taxes. If you're delinquent 3 years in a row, state law lets the county take your home and sell it in the auction. So to be clear, if you're like Judy, you got overcharged by the city on taxes, then got asked by the county to pay interest on them. Oh, and then when you couldn't, the county sold your home out from under you. Detroit hit a low point in 2013, when saddled with $18 to $20 billion in debt, it filed for the largest municipal bankruptcy in the nation's history. Mike Duggan ran for mayor on the idea that he was the turnaround guy, the businessman, the one who could pull Detroit out.
I think starting tomorrow, we're going to start to turn the city around.
The city did improve dramatically, and Detroit just said thank you by electing him to a second term.
Well, thank you, Detroit!
But it happened with a city budget balanced in part on overtaxed citizens. Since 2009, Jerry Paffendorf has studied tax foreclosure and Detroit land ownership.
How many Judys are there in Detroit?
If you throw a stone into the auction properties, you're probably going to hit one. This is a map of Detroit. Everything colored in is a property that's at the tax foreclosure auction right now. So we found countywide 76,000 properties that are 1 to 2 years behind on their property taxes. And we found just about 64,000 that are 2 years or more. And if you go down to Detroit, you can see, I mean, almost everything is tax delinquent. That's pretty indicative of how screwy the situation is.
That screwy situation creates high-stakes auctions, pitting people like the Hagermans against advocates like Michelle Oberholzer.
Okay, Keating, Eddie Murray, I'd like to place a bid for him.
Her team at the United Community Housing Coalition uses donations, loans, and whatever money struggling owners have saved to try to rescue houses.
It's not even tough judgment calls a lot of the time because the bidding is so high.
Current bid is at 82. That's our bid, so we're winning.
I'm just gonna bid what he's got until you tell me if you want me to go higher.
We're winning?
Yes.
Okay, next.
17366 Apple 13,000.
None of these folks have money, huh?
Can I see her file?
Of the nearly 300 auction homes Michelle tried to buy back, she only won 47.
The bidding has gone very high, so we're not gonna be able to keep bidding, okay?
A lot of the messaging from the city and the county recently has made it sound like, well, there are still some foreclosure issues. They're really on the mend. Every year there will be fewer and fewer people in the scenario you just described.
The volume of foreclosures that we still have is far from acceptable. In another time and place, this would be a moral outrage, and yes, it's lower than it has been in the past, but our standards are completely skewed.
Mayor Duggan and the Wayne County Treasurer, Eric Sabri, have declined repeated requests for interviews with Vice News. In a statement, Duggan's office explained that the city had done significant assessment reductions, pushed for legislation that offered reduced interest rates to struggling homeowners, and made dramatic improvements to the assessment process. But the city has no plans in place to repay homeowners who were overcharged, and the county has no plans to stop selling occupied homes.
What does tax foreclosure do to communities in neighborhoods here in Detroit?
So tax foreclosure has destabilized and reduced the population. It's increased the amount of blight and vacancy in the city, pushing out lower income people, turning owners into renters.
So why would the city and Wayne County have an incentive to keep any of that in place?
There's a big financial incentive to keep this dance going between the city and the county. They always say follow the money, right? If Wayne County and Detroit were not benefiting from the tax foreclosure system the way it is, they would have stopped doing it some time ago.
And now, the county may be hooked. Since 2010, the county's general fund has received $456 million in interest and fees from doing this. According to data provided by the Wayne County Executive's Office, without all this extra delinquent tax revenue, the county would be broke. It's good business for the Hagermans.
Yep, just won this one.
Donna takes her time.
They bought 310 homes for just over $2 million.
That's the 19333?
Yes, and we won the 20115.
What did we pay for it? 32. Plus tax?
511.
They won Judy's home for a total of $3,711, a little less than what she got it for in 2009.
Are there any rules here in Detroit when it comes to the housing market?
They would say yes. I mean, you know, you're not interviewing the county, though, so you have to be pretty careful. They would say yes.
Do you think then that you've been able to sort of get in on a market that maybe shouldn't have existed in the first place?
Well, Wayne County sells houses that are occupied. So we are the big bad investor. I bought a home that's occupied. Well, you sold the home that's occupied.
He can have it. I don't know what, I don't know what to say.
Judy is preparing to become a renter somewhere else. She refuses to pay rent for a home she once owned.
I've started packing up to leave this place. I just got a few things to pack, some knickknacks, and just take the old furniture out.
Do you think you'll ever get a chance to own land in Detroit again?
The question should be, would I want to? I'm not sure.
All right, as we try and recover home ownership rates from the last recession, let's take a look at how race can severely restrict the upward economic mobility of African Americans. Since at least the 1940s, home ownership has been seen as a cornerstone of the American dream. It provides a sense of security, but it also builds wealth in the form of equity in your home. Now, through the mid-20th century, local governments and financial institutions used a practice known as redlining. They would literally draw red lines around black neighborhoods, leading to fewer municipal services, lower home values in those areas. But that was supposed to have ended. Well, a study from the Brookings Institution found that neighborhoods that are at least 50% black have an average of 23% lower home values. This is serious. This devaluation, by the way, just to give you a bit about how this is done, it's measured against comparable neighborhoods, looking at absolute home price differences in neighborhoods with at least 50% black populations versus neighborhoods that have fewer than 1% black residents. It also looks at structural characteristics, the year the home was built, square footage, number of rooms. It's trying to make an apples-to-apples comparison. And it looks at neighborhood amenities, the physical landscape, the economic status, the quality of education, the types of stores available, grocery stores, things like that. When all of those are equalized, we're comparing apples to apples here. When it is equalized, homes in black neighborhoods are undervalued on average by $48,000. That is a loss of $156 billion in home value for millions of Americans, mostly African Americans, but also white Americans who live in majority black neighborhoods. Brookings looked at 113 different metropolitan areas that had at least one majority black neighborhood and compared home values in that majority black neighborhood to home values outside of the majority black neighborhood. All of the purple, these are all purple, all of these purple areas are areas of devaluation. You can see them all over the eastern part of the country where majority black neighborhoods have lower home values than other neighborhoods that are otherwise equal. The green, you can hardly see them. There's a green here, there's a green here, green here, green here, green here. There are a few areas of appreciation where majority black neighborhoods have higher home values than non-majority black neighborhoods. But the overwhelming majority of them are cases in which black neighborhoods have lower property values. The majority black neighborhoods in Florida's Sebastian Vero Beach area actually have higher values compared to other neighborhoods, but there are obviously far more areas that have devaluation. Perhaps the starkest area is Lynchburg, Virginia. Black majority neighborhoods there have home values 81% lower than in other neighborhoods. The absolute home value almost totally wipes out the value of the highest appreciation in the study, which is the Sebastian Vero Beach area. This is fascinating to dig into. Joining me now is the lead author on that study, Andre Perry of the Brookings Institution. Andre, you have put into a study something that we have known of, but is so influential because it's not just about your home value. It is going back decades to the home value that African Americans have tried to achieve so that they can pass on to other generations. So it is hurt generation after generation that African American neighborhoods have been undervalued. It means that African Americans can pass on less to their kids.
Absolutely. The $156 billion that my colleagues Jonathan Rothwell at Gallup and David Harshbarger also at Brookings, the $156 billion we found in cumulative losses is really the amount of money that we use to uplift our social status.
Right.
So it's the money that should go to starting a business, going to college, improving your home, or even moving to a better neighborhood.
Right.
That's what we use the equity for. But essentially, racism is robbing people, black people, of that ability to uplift themselves.
Paired with your report is some interesting numbers from the National Bureau of Economic Research that 54% of the wealth owned by black families is in home ownership. So it is a massive source of what wealth there is in black households. So this is so critically important because it's not that home ownership is just one piece of the wealth of African Americans, it's the majority of it.
Yeah, and we got to remember that black folk believe in the American dream, and we strive for the American dream. Also in the report, we found that black communities, majority black communities, hold about $600 billion worth of housing assets. There is power and strength in black communities. We are doing what we are expected to do. But the valuation is taking away more opportunities to advance ourselves. The narrative has been that black folk are the problem for declining neighborhoods, that black women's marital status, that black boys who don't pull up their pants are the reasons why black communities are not moving up. But our research clearly finds that the devaluation, the perception of a negative value is robbing black residents opportunities for growth.
And it's a vicious cycle. I spend a lot of my time in Philadelphia, and your study found that Philadelphia, close to the average of home devaluation, had a lower number of libraries in some of those areas, lower proficiency rate for public school kids. Game this out. If the value of the home is lower, it then creates a circle in which certain institutions don't get settled in there, certain retailers don't come in, certain grocery stores don't come in.
Yeah, you devalue a neighborhood, there's divestment, people leave the neighborhood, there's fewer municipal expenditures in the neighborhood, school quality goes down because there's just not a lot of revenue in the neighborhood. It's a vicious cycle. Again, it's not black folks' fault. These are great assets. They should be worth more, 23% more, and that money should be used for those community benefits.
So I want to show you some more research from the National Bureau of Economic Research that shows wealth held by white Americans at the top versus wealth held by black Americans. Now, if you look around the middle to the right of that screen, you see that during the Great Recession, wealth falters. In both cases, it falters by a lot more because white Americans had a lot more wealth to lose, and then it comes up. Whereas black wealth, again, if it's dependent on things like property, it didn't drop as much, it didn't come up by as much either.
Yeah, you know, and this is the problem. Wealth gives you the ability to withstand the shocks that inevitably will come. You lose a job, you get sick, your son or daughter gets married. You typically leverage your equity to fill those gaps. the inability for blacks to gain wealth hurts our ability to deal with the shocks that will come. And so what I have been advocating for is for us to clearly have policies that help us deal with the racism that's baked into real estate agents, appraisals, and lending practices. But I'm also saying to the black community, hey, this report that you can get at brookings.edu, you can actually see your price and you can what your home should be worth, and you can demand value by animating the activity in your community and say, hey, we're worth more, we deserve more, we can invest more in our black communities.
Andre, great conversation, great research. Thank you for joining me. Andre Perry is with the Brookings Institute.
This channel is dedicated to bringing truth to power and engaging our enemy with intellectual warfare. The dominant society will never switch up their playbook, so we must make a new one. The war we find ourselves in is a technological war, using technology, propaganda, and psyops to oppress and control you. Black intelligentsia, please share the new black media, counter propaganda arms, make it plain TV.
No killing what can't be killed.